And in my late 30s, I began to jog. Early wave of joggers, one of the most foolish things I ever did. And I was jogging near my house in Washington. I was an assistant attorney general of the United States, best friend of the attorney general of the United States, and I was jogging near my house. And a police came by. Fortunately, I had my Justice Department credentials in my hip pocket. Boy! I kept on jogging. My hair was beginning to gray, but I'm jogging. Boy! I keep on jogging. Hey, you boy! Spotlight on me. Boy, you better stop! I figured I better stop. And so I stopped. 2 white cops get out, slam me up against the wall, spread my legs, and then spray my legs. Hit me pretty hard between the legs, and it hurt very much. I kept saying, look in my back pocket, reach in my back pocket. Boy, we're gonna, you robbed a store, boy this, boy that, boy. They pulled out this thing, and it was a nice leather thing. It said, Justice Department official. Oh, they melted. Oh, you look just like, we had a call, you just like, it fits you too, sir, blah, 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 blah. Well, of course, I called the police chief the minute I got home, and those guys were suspended and disciplined. If I had had no credentials in my pocket, I would have been in jail that night. Middle class, 37-year-old father of 2 children, doing nothing more than jogging. And that's not the only time it happened to me. Well, if it would happen to me, imagine what would happen to a 17-year-old black kid, and there's often no public place to eat. Well, we want to be rid of all of that stuff. I think if I thought about it, I would have thought that white people's bad views of black people are based on ignorance. And when we get together, they will cease to be ignorant about us, and the scales will fall from their eyes, and they will begin to be decent. That's what I thought. I was pretty naive, but that's what I thought. I think that black people were always super Americans. We had to believe in America more than other people did in order to have any hope, in order to live, in order not to go crazy. We had to believe that the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments meant something, and that the Declaration of Independence, though written by a slave owner, did mean the full scope of the words. So once we had the opportunity to make it work, we went full bore at it. And beside, we had this terrible itch of the humiliation in our daily lives that we wanted to get rid of. But we also had something else, and that was a very powerful faith in the decency of white people. I no longer have that faith, but we had it then, and that was, if we can only demonstrate to white people how rotten this system is, most of them will change, and the country will change very rapidly. I think that gave us our discipline, and that faith, both in the country and in the decency of white people. White people owned it, one. 2, the country had fought this fight for democracy. Blacks felt it, whites felt it, and blacks were restless. They just, sitting on the back of the bus, being relegated to the upper floor of a theater, and sometimes to only one row of a theater. Going to a gas station when your bladder was full and not knowing whether you'd be permitted to use the bathroom. Having white people be just as rude to you as they chose to be, giving you absolutely no respect. not being able to try on clothes that you bought at stores, all of that stuff. And worse was going on. And Northerners knew it, and they had tried kind of to avoid it. But when blacks started taking their children to school, the North could no longer avoid the stinking, rotting fruit. And the South was represented by some of the most unattractive people in the Congress. Senator Theodore G. Bilbo of Mississippi was just an awful human being. And there were a lot of Southerners in the House who just spewed bile. And so the North couldn't see it anymore. And blacks began to get hope from the fact that the Supreme Court had finally said, and blacks interpreted this 54 decision to mean the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution include us. Just as we've always said, all God's children are equal. And so we started to move. And white people thought that's right. And a lot of white people joined in. And then the Supreme Court decided that it was unconstitutional for states to run segregated school systems. And little cute, clean, starched black kids began to show up on people's television screens, being walked to school by their parents and screamed at by white people. The contrast could not have been more stark. The white people who were screaming were, the caricature is the people, working class people, not terribly clean. Some of them obese, faces distorted with anger, screaming obscenities at 6-7-year-old children.
Is Rodger Wilkins. I'm David Hoffman, and I filmed this interview with Rodger back in 1989, and this 72-year-old man is telling me of his experiences growing up in the 1940s and 1950s and 1960s. He had a really tough time. Although he came from a middle-class family, became a lawyer, actually won a Pulitzer Prize, working for the Washington Post as a journalist with Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, the famous Watergate investigation. So I'm interviewing Rodger in 1989, and we really hit it off. He was ready to talk, and I was ready to ask. And I said to him, be yourself. Just let me know what you felt, what you saw, and think about it in terms of future generations. He had a daughter, Elizabeth, and he said, I'm going to talk like I'm talking to her grandchildren. So here we are in the present with all that's going on in the country right now, the racial animosity, stuff in the streets, the government, the desire to make things better. And I'm thinking of Rodger. He died at 74 of dementia, and he was speaking to me at that time for the future. We're in the future. I hope you enjoy or find provocative what Rodger had to say.